Yep. I mean,
Good evening, everybody. This is Binghamton City Council work session. It is Monday, May 19th. I call the meeting to order at 6:05 PM. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Councilwoman Murray,
eh,
Councilmember Middleton,
present.
Councilmember Kavanaugh,
Present.
Councilmember Rathmel,
Present.
Councilmember Matavetsky is absent, Councilmember Hotchkiss,
Present.
Council President Dundon.
Present.
Thank you.
So our first topic tonight is R 25-95, and that is in the Planning Committee with the Chair, Councilmember Rathmel, and our presenter is Dr. Juliette Burling. Please come on down, Juliette.
Welcome. So this is our 2595, a resolution authorizing a professional services contract with Robley Historic Preservation. Could you outline this?
Yes, our last historic design, well, our only historic design guideline was adopted in 2011. And since then, we've had at least one new historic district added and one expanded and a number of new listings, and the whole thing needs to be brought up to date. So we submitted an RFP, I believe, RFQ. I think it went out March 12th. We had 2 respondents. We had environmental EDR and Robley Historic District. And we had a review committee of 5. We all selected Robley. And I'd like to go into contract with them.
So this, for a little bit of context, this is anticipated 6 months for the full scope at about 25.5 K.
Yep.
In looking at the Susquehanna Heritage Area Management Plan, that appeared to be a multi-county effort. Are there folks from the county that have been involved in this conversation?
No.
So just, okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Burling.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Our next presenter will be Sarah Glose. This is R 25-98, is in the Planning Committee, and I will hand it over to Councilmember Rathmel.
Thank you, President Dundon. Welcome. This is our 2598, a resolution authorizing a lease agreement with S2 Property Development for a portion of property at 195 State Street.
Yes, hello, thank you. Okay, so this is related to O2535 that I believe will be on the agenda for Wednesday's vote. That is the ordinance authorizing the funding for this project. The most of the funding in that ordinance related to this is about $10,000 in that are not. So this is authorizing the city to enter into a lease agreement for a portion of the property next to 195 State, commonly known as Crowbar. If you guys flip through the packet, you can see both the conveyance map that outlines a specific area that we're talking about, as well as some of the larger context. There's more information in that O2535, the RL that was associated with that. But essentially, we are asking for the general terms of a 5-year term at $1,000 a year to be negotiated between Corporation Counsel and the lawyer for S2 property development. The intent behind that is to give us some flexibility in actually being able to spend the money on the alley to make the improvements, while also not necessarily locking us into the long-term purchase of a property that is not really adjacent to any other city properties and doesn't necessarily fit in with a larger land use management strategy for the city, with the idea that it'll give us some time to figure out kind of how maintenance on this is working. We have some tentative agreements with the county and with the property owner to kind of figure out how maintenance over the course of the improvements is going to work. So this just kind of gives us that flexibility. And what we would like to do is to bring this general term in front of the council. And then if these general terms are accepted, then authorize Corporation Council to enter into more specific negotiations, basically to avoid going through a full negotiation and then bringing it here and having the basic terms of the deal not accepted and having to go back to the drawing board. So it's kind of this initial step to authorize Corporation Council to enter into those negotiations.
So then based on the maintenance, the 5-year lease then would be with an option to buy then?
No, it would not be with an option to buy. The way we have it set up is the lease will allow us to do the project that we want to do there. And then we had talked about doing some sort of clawback of the property would be sold within a certain period after the lease ended.
Okay.
And the rationale behind that, and Bob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's just kind of a strange area for our downtown folks to have to maintain in the middle of predominantly snowstorms. There's not any other areas around there except for the roadway that we're clearing. There are certain portions of downtown that Parks actively does maintain. It's just not included on State Street. So it would require us to basically send an additional crew over to State Street. As we know, the roads are the priority, making sure our emergency access routes are open during snowstorms. So this would kind of be on the lower end of that priority list. And given that it is such a centrally occupied area of downtown, we want to make sure that there's the ability for that to get maintained through the life cycle of the project. And I know one thing that Councilmember Hotchkiss brought up that I talked about with Corporation Council was making sure that the property owner can't essentially capitalize on the value of the improvements to then turn around and sell the property at a later date. So when Bob mentions the clawback, that's what that would be designed. That is what that would be designed to do, is to allow us to make the improvements, create the space that we want to create there and create that connection between State Street and Washington Street, while not necessarily having that long-term commitment to city ownership of that space.
So it sounds like the lease is actually going to protect the city from any liability of that.
Well,
Yes,
no, but so we're undertaking though, for those 5 years, it becomes city responsibility to snow removal, sidewalk maintenance, whatever.
That's something we're working with the county on. So currently they maintain the space in front of the forum as well as the parking lot behind. So for them, they have those contiguous pieces. They're not necessarily willing to take ownership of it at this time. That is something that long-term I would like to discuss with them, but given that the project is not done yet, they're not willing to kind of take that long-term ownership at this time. So we're just trying to put ourselves in a situation to have the maximum flexibility on the city's end while still getting the improvements in the property.
so what we're trying to address is the fact that to do the project, we need site control, but it doesn't make sense for the city to own this parcel long-term.
And when we say do the project, and I think this is the dot that I'm trying to connect and that I may have missed somewhere in the discussion or the content that was provided, this is the alleyway again. Right? So
correct.
RL 2583, that's 211K that was introduced a few weeks, like that's the project. The
Correct.
project when we
That's-
talk about it.
That is the project, yes. So
Okay.
the base improvements, which is installing a sidewalk between State Street and Washington Street, installing electrical conduit in furtherance of a public art project that would be procured under a separate public call.
But we need to spend another 5K to secure the site in order to do the project.
That's correct. And that was outlined in the match for the previous RL. We had authorized a little bit more than that when we were talking about purchase. In the conversations about lease, we were able to get that price down a little bit.
Which RL was that?
The one associated with 02535. On the grant worksheet, it mentions a $10,000 match associated with the property acquisition. I don't have that RL number off the top of my head.
in my mind, this was the lease would be kind of a prerequisite to city ownership. That would be my hope.
I don't think this
But you-
precludes us from city ownership in the long term, but it doesn't obligate us to city ownership in the long term if that is not deemed in the best interest of the city.
How do we manage, like, now that we've been on like the alleyway management, how do we manage commercial alley? Like that's the only other like comparable thing I can think of that's.
I don't have that information off the top of my head. I do know that that part of downtown, I do believe Parks does maintain the sidewalks on Court Street. I think that came about during the pandemic. But I would have to ask Nick for more details.
Is the current property owner open to a sale or not at this time, or?
He's open to a sale. The figure that he was comfortable with was much more than we would legally be able to pay based on the base valuation.
Councilmember Rathmel was RL 25-83 for 2535.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right, thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions?
And I will note that I'm not asking for expedition. So if there are further questions as a result of this conversation, or if we're getting a sense that this is something that council is seeing favorably and we would like to try to advance some of the actual terms of the contract, I think we can do that. I just didn't want to expend our corporation counsel time or the private property owners paid counsel to negotiate a contract that even the basic terms were not necessarily favorable to this body.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Nobody else? All right, moving on. Sarah, you're our presenter again. This is R 25-96. It's in the planning committee, and I'll hand it over to Councilmember Rathmel.
Thank you, President Dundon. This is our 2596, a resolution approving application for New York State HCR for funding under New York Main Street Downtown Anchor Program.
Yes, so this is the New York Main Street program. The city of Binghamton is eligible to apply for this as a municipality. In this case, we are asking specifically for the downtown anchor application. Last year around the same time, we were speaking with this body about a potential project. I believe there was one potential proposal on Court Street as well as a potential proposal on 1 North Depot. Neither of those projects ended up being ready for an application in any event, but as a result of those conversations, we had a discussion about doing a more robust public call for these types of projects. So if you see in your packet, there's an RFP that went out, I believe back in February or March, that was due April 16th. So we received the application. We only had one application that came in. That is the application that you see represented in the packet. So at this time, we are asking for a municipal resolution authorizing the city to apply for a grant of up to $500,000 through the New York Main Street program for improvements at 121 Court Street, as more further detailed in the packet under the project narrative and financials.
So that project narrative, so total cost of the project of 1.1 million, 500K from the grant for 4 high-end residential units and 1 commercial space.
Yes, and they would have to be, I think high end is a relative term under the New York Main Street funding. They have to be 90% or less of area median income, and they provide the exact ranges, although they have not updated this document with those numbers this time.
Relative to the requirements of the downtown anchor project, what compelling need or importance to the neighborhood or community would the application you're hoping to submit be demonstrating?
Yeah, so the property in question is the former rug shop on Court Street between the traffic circle and the library, roughly. Long vacant property, has been continually deteriorating facade for my entire time here at the city, which is not super long, but I do know that that property has had had vacancy for a while now. I have been upstairs in the project with the Realtor when they first put it on the market. In its current condition, you could not have anybody living in that property. So this would bring additional units of housing online. As we all know, we have a supply issue when it comes to housing of all kinds. So this fits in with the governor's stated priorities of having an all of the above approach to housing, and is specifically impactful in our downtown for bringing a vacant, underutilized, blighted property back into productive use in the hands of a property owner that has experience with this type of renovation and this type of funding to be able to bring both that commercial space back online and units that are currently not occupied, not viable, back into the supply line.
I would disagree that we have a lack of housing supply of all types. I think, well, and my next question is about which market analysis you would intend to use to represent the market demand. Because we've known for years, we don't, obviously this isn't proposing student housing, luxury housing. You did say high end can vary, but community need or compelling need would be for far below that 90%. Am I right? But that's not what this project comes anywhere close to demonstrating.
No, and this is also the only project that's submitted. So at this point, it really is a take it or leave it. This is the project on the table. If we would like to invest in our vacant properties and add housing units into the pipeline, I believe there is a pretty significant amount of data out there that we do need housing of all types. I mean, even anecdotally, we've spoken with a lot of employers who are having trouble attracting employees to the area because they can't offer the type of housing that young professionals specifically are looking for. So while we do absolutely have a need for ultra low income housing, affordable housing, supportive housing. That's why we've been working so hard to get nearly 1,000 units of that exact type of housing in the pipeline. And we also need to be balancing that with other types of housing that we are currently not bringing online. Market rate housing in particular is not penciling out in any communities right now. I've been speaking with my colleagues in Syracuse about all of the various stalled market rate housing in the pipeline right now. The construction financing is simply not allowing it to be built without additional public subsidy. So this is a project that I think would be really impactful, specifically for the block just to the east of the traffic circle, which has traditionally had less investment than other parts of our downtown, bringing that vacant property back online, again, with a property owner that has the experience and the wherewithal to complete the project.
In conversations that I assume you've had with Mr. Whalen about his proposal, did he expound on what he means by, quote, the type of tenant he hopes to attract, who he believes will add to the diversity of the downtown district?
We did not have a specific conversation related to that. I do know that most of his other rental housing in the area does tend to be that young professional housing.
I think what we have heard from Mr. Whalen at City Council in the past is opposition to individuals such that are served by the Salvation Army across from his current business. And I think that representation from his perspective is cause for concern.
This proposal is not intended to meet that particular housing need at this time, and it was never represented as such.
Sarah, so in Mr. Whalen's proposal, number 5 here, supporting documentation, is there any way you can email the photos, the sales flyer, the floor dimensions, and purchase contract, please? Because it's not in our packet.
Yep, that would be fine. I didn't want to put some of the more specifics of the deal in the public packet, but I'm more than happy to share that with council.
Thank you so much. I need a visual as a construction guy.
No problem. And I just want to address one other comment that Councilmember Rathmel made about the market analysis. So the market analysis for this particular project has not been completed yet. One of the things that is required as part of the application is for the property owner to put together a market analysis and a business plan. Again, did not want to ask the property owner to move ahead with that until we had assurance that there would be a municipal resolution, as it is a requirement of the application, and we can't move forward without that resolution from this body.
I think that to me, which is why I asked specifically about which market analysis, that to me is critical to determining whether or not this represents the compelling need required by the downtown anchor project.
And I would argue that HCR would be the ones to make that determination based on the market analysis that would fit the needs of the application and the more specific guidance that they provide to the applicants.
And we represent our districts.
Does anyone else have anything they would like to question or add? Sarah, thank you so much.
I-
Oh, sorry, Robert.
No, I would just, I mean, compared to last year, an RFP got put out. It was an open tender, so to speak, and this is what we got in. So I think I'm inclined to, move with what came in, being that there's not an alternative necessarily.
And I can tell you that I did have a couple of other inquiries about this, very, very surface level. What is this? Would I be eligible type of inquiries? And they were primarily from student housing providers that did not ultimately submit into the program, but that was the only other relatively substantial interest, and substantial is overstating how aggressive that interest was in the program.
Anyone else? Thank you so much, Sarah.
No problem. And I will send over those documents when I'm back at my desk.
Thank you so much. So our next presenter is Kent Drake Dries, and this is R 25-97, and it's in the Employees Committee, and I'll hand it over to Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, President Dundon. So resolution 2597 is an ordinance that to reallocate funding from one general equipment mechanic to supervisor general equipment repair. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Sure, yes. Wow, now it's on. Hi, yeah, I can tell you about that. This is has been in the works for quite some time. Essentially, this is somebody who is a general equipment mechanic position, and there's 4 of them, I believe, that work for DPW, but none of them were particularly dedicated to the police fleet, right? So which is a different kind of work. And so one of those general equipment mechanics left the city, who was doing the police work, and they went to work for the railroad down south or something. So they agreed to come back, but they established a dedicated police garage where the police work is to be done separately. So this is recognition of the establishment of a separate standalone police operation garage environment. And so this person would be the supervisor of that garage. So the title moves from a general equipment mechanic like the other mechanics to a supervisor general equipment repair. And there's another supervisor general equipment repair, and that's the person who oversees the garage over at DPW. So it's a similar like position over for the police, just dedicated to working on the police fleet.
So Kent, in this, it says the creation of a separate facility. I don't know if you're the one who can answer this, but does that mean storage that's used in Shenango Bridge will actually get utilized to maintain the police vehicles?
No, I don't think so, because the facility is in the basement of this building.
Oh, so that's where it'll be housed. Okay.
Yeah. So I think it used to be fire department or something down there or something. So anyway, there's a garage down there that got set up, and that's
Okay.
where the work's being done.
Yeah, this is the first we've seen of anything that said separate facility. That's why I'm
Okay.
asking.
Oh, okay, yeah, it's down there.
So is part of, I'm just looking at how the transfers are working, is part of this is, I mean, we're pulling money from gas and diesel, so part of this is a raise as well for the supervisory.
Yes, the mechanics, the base salary for them is it's around 58, something like that. And this one is up to 65. Yeah. So there's a progression from the diesel mechanic, which is fire, and that's the fire mechanic. They have a similar setup. They have their own shop over there. And then the police would be its own fleet, and then the general equipment mechanics at the DPW garage.
Anyone else have any other questions?
No, I just, things like this, just a little philosophical, right? But things like this tend to run in circles. So we are splitting and creating and claiming efficiencies and things from a fire garage, a police garage, and a DPW garage or general repair garage. And then somebody's going to come around in a few years and say, hey, it's going to be more efficient if we have one garage that's everything all together. And we won't be duplicating parts and equipment. And the diesel guy over here can work on this engine over. So, but this is where we are in that great cycle of things. So.
Well, yeah,
So-
because if you remember, the mechanic that does work for the fire department wanted to be part of their union versus the
yep.
CSCA, and
I know.
yeah. So there'd be some messiness in that.
There's a cycle. That's what I'm saying.
Anyone else have any other questions or comments?
Fair.
Kent, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Our next presenter is Mayor Jared Cram. This is R 25-93. It is in the Public Works Committee, and I will hand it over to the chair, Councilmember Hotchkiss.
Thank you, Council President. This is R 25-93, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with CPL for North Side Fire Station design. Do you want to give us an overview, Mayor?
Sure. So, good evening, everyone. City's fire station on the north side is currently, I wouldn't say at the end of its useful life, but getting there. During the first couple of years, as mayor, I spearheaded an investment in our neighborhood fire stations, but upon investigation of the north side fire station on State Street, there were some pretty significant structural issues, nothing that's unsafe, but just something where we would be putting probably millions of dollars into that building to extend its life, not that much more. And talking to the fire department, it made a lot more sense to initiate a plan to build a new fire station on the north side. So some months ago, we issued an RFQ for design services. We interviewed firms. Councilman Hotchkiss sat in those meetings, and CPL was selected to advance the initial phase of a fire station design. So essentially, this is going to be split up into 3 different phases. The first phase, which is pre-development, which includes some investigation about the history of calls, mapping, making sure that we have our ISO rating, which is a class 1 as a emergency response, looking at where in the city on the north side that the station would make sense from a response standpoint. And then moving on after that, a more detailed site design, and then hopefully during that time, also identify grant funding that can pay for the capital project once it gets built. So it's essentially find out where we want to put it. Then after that, finalize a design and finalize how we're going to pay for it, hopefully through grant funding. And then the last phase would actually be construction. So think about it in a 2.5 to 3 year cycle. Outlined in CPL's scope and services is again kind of that baseline about site selection. They're going to be using a heat mapping and emergency response expert that assists other municipalities in how you site and where you site fire stations, looking at things like 4-minute marks in terms of response. Then they'll do a site evaluation, looking at if there's any environmental work that has to be done as part of that, where this could be located on the north side. I don't have a preferred place. I don't have something that I definitely want to see it go. The city does own some land on the north side. The BLDC does own some land on the north side, but we really want to let the data kind of speak to where this should and could go. And then the last part of the scope that you'd be voting on here would be a conceptual design that allows us to move this towards that funding phase. Enough detail where we could take to state and federal partners, say that we need this. We have a good budget, as well as a concept for where and what it would basically look like. So in my opinion, this this really is a multi-year project. We will be working with the fire department on the process in terms of gathering data, obviously their input on what is needed in a fire station. The fire stations of the 21st century look nothing like those of the past, specifically with the design to prevent carcinogens from the fire scene from entering the living quarters of the fire station has become, as well as having places for on-site training and having enough room for all of the different capabilities of the fire department. And right now, the north side is home to our hazmat truck and unit. Making sure that they have, the space available to store all of the equipment apparatus is important as well. And it's really important to me, and I'm sure it's important to Councilman Hotchkiss, that the north side retain a fire station. It's a side of town that's seen a lot of divestment over the years. And it's important to me that the north side keeps a fire station, that we invest in one that can serve that neighborhood for decades and decades to come.
Thank you. I think my biggest issue with this RL as it is right now, I think we're signing up for all the phases at the same time. And I think from a more pragmatic standpoint, it makes sense to do maybe phase 1 and 2 before you even introduce phase 3. So a number of those presentations they went through, and in their site selection and their evaluation of the data and the mapping, I can't remember which one it was, but they were like, maybe there, and this could be unpopular, but maybe there wasn't a need for another fire station, or that region wasn't the best spot for their outlying fire station. So before we have that evaluation and we were looking at the response time analysis and where the responses are and where the density is, I think it's kind of preemptive to be moving to also be signing on to the conceptual design before we have that analysis.
So my pushback on that would be conceptual design versus what final design would look at would be totally different. Final design would be hundreds of thousands of dollars, call it 15-20% of the actual capital project cost. One of the things that we're going to need, and why we're going to need some level of design included in this kind of first go at it, is for grant applications. When we're going after congressionally directed funding through Congressman Riley or our U.S. senators, they need a budget, they need a concept. And specifically with a lot of state grants, they need either a preliminary engineering study or something, pretty substantial in order to justify and show the state that it's a real project. One of the big ways you can do that is you can have a concept design. So I too wanted to split this up, and that's why I gave CPL this hard cap of 100,000, because we don't want to get too far ahead. We don't want to sign on for a scope that includes final design and hundreds of thousands of dollars more. But this keeps us aggressive with the timeline without spending or authorizing the spending of too much money.
No, I do have to say, in doing that through the conceptual design, I've seen that done many times in construction. So I agree with that, Mayor. And Councilmember Hotchkiss can speak to his district better than me. I just think, a fire station like a grocery store on that side of town is a necessity and should stay there no matter what. So, but that's just my opinion. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments? Thank you so much, Mayor.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Robert Heary, our corporate counsel, and this is in Rules and Procedures. It's R 2592, and I'm going to pass it off to Councilmember Kavanaugh.
Okay, this is R 2592, a local law amending the Code Chapter G25 entitled Exercise of Legislative Powers by Council. This is to address a conflict between two parts of the charter in dealing with what it takes for council to hold over a piece of legislation for future consideration. Take it away, Corporation Counsel.
So there's inconsistency in our code between two provisions. One is this section G25. The other deals with section 26 dash something 7. So 26-7 says that council can hold over legislation on a motion a second. And that was enacted via ordinance. Section G25, which was enacted by local law, requires that all motions be voted on by everyone. And so for section 26-7 to work as intended, where it's just a motion and a second, we need to amend section G25 to basically make an exception for holdover motions, and that's what this does. And the ordinance wasn't effective because you can't amend a local law by ordinance.
You know, anyone have any other questions? I mean, it essentially allows, the intent of the law was to allow two council people to put a hold on legislation, which kind of preserves minority voice in council, and gives opportunity for to have a more deliberative process during legislation, which I think is a good thing. And I thank Mr. Heary for kind of stepping up and putting this right together in a very quick workmanlike fashion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much on that quick turnaround. So we didn't have to go through that again. So nobody else have any other questions or comments? All right, moving on. This is R 25-94. Robert Heary, our Corp Counsel, is our presenter. This is in the Finance Committee, and I will hand it over to Councilmember Kavanaugh.
This is R 2594, an ordinance to adopt new code chapter 339A sewer credits. And you're taking this one. I know zero about this process. So I don't think council, I don't know that anyone on council, maybe Councilman Hotchkiss from his time at the sewage treatment plant, but I don't think we have a clear idea what this is about. So we're gonna need some explaining.
So, all the municipalities that are covered under the Binghamton Johnson City Joint Sewage Treatment get allocated sewer credits, as part of the amount of, sewage that flows through their pipes into the, sewage treatment plant.
All right, hold. A financial credit, a
What's
use
a sewer
credit,
credit?
what
Right.
what is a sewer credit exactly?
So they started out as use credits, where essentially it gave everyone a certain amount of usage that they could put through the joint sewage treatment plant, and basically gave a way for the treatment plant to track and then charge back based off of that flow. Over time, the city and other municipalities have freed up their sewer credits by doing things like splitting off their stormwater from their sewage treatment, or doing different remediation, or having other individuals do remediation. And so various municipalities have ended up with the surplus of sewer credits. Other municipalities don't have them. And sometimes projects need credits in order to move forward because they can't complete enough remediation. They start putting more sewage back into the treatment plant than there otherwise would be. So a number of municipalities have set up for the sale of these credits to basically allow them to be transferred, because otherwise they're basically just sitting there. And the way the sale of the credits works is basically, if you have a developer that needs credits because they can't get their flows low enough, they can go and request the purchase of the sewer credits. The owner has to use them within a year of buying them. Otherwise, they basically are forfeited back to the municipality. So you're not going to have some sort of private developer be able to corner the market on sewer credits. The idea is really just, we have this pool available. People need them from time to time. They can apply to the city or other municipalities and they can buy them. So other municipalities have setups to allow for the sale of these. Binghamton has never set that up. As far as I know, the city has never sold any sewer credits. But it's one of those things where like they're sitting on our books, and it gives us an opportunity to do something with them other than just having them sit there.
Is there anything driving this? Is there current demand among the users of the treatment plant?
There are other municipalities that from time to time have reached out to the city about purchasing sewer credits. I think one of the projects that's out there right now that might need sewer credits is the 187 Clinton Street project. I don't know if they'll need them exactly. Part of it's going to depend on what they can do in terms of their remediation efforts and stuff. But they're a development that might need to purchase some sewer credits from the city. That's kind of active right now. Questions?
Well, I get, yeah, I'll have more questions, I guess. I mean, does this actually have anything to do with what the plant capacity actually is, or is this to meet whatever state or federal design guidelines there is for sewage handling and runoff handling and stuff like that, and we just have these extra credits? I mean, the only I'm thinking about carbon credits in my mind as a
No, this does ultimately tie back into the amount of sewage that the joint sewage treatment plant can handle. There is a cap on the total amount of sewer credits that are allocated to everyone. There's a sewer cap in terms of how many that the city has. And this is more of a Ron question or a Ron thing, but I know that there's sections of the city and each section has a set amount of sewer credits allocated to it. So the city has like sort of a general pool, and then specific sections of the city, because of the section they're in, have a portion of that sewer credit. So it ties into how much flow can go through that section, and obviously ultimately how much flow can go to the sewage treatment plant. So that it is a practical piece of it. And there's a calculation in terms of tracking, how much flow comes into the plant and everything. It's more math than I can do with my law degree.
Okay.
And that's part of why it's set up for the engineer to handle that, because Ron has a track of how many sewer credits the city has. They're the ones that the plans come into. They handle all the permits anyway that link in with sewage. If you look at the other chapters that are around this, chapter 339, chapter 341, or whatever it is, there's 3 chapters that deal with the sewers, their use, and hooking into them.
And how do you end up with a valuation of what a sewer credit is worth in the city of Binghamton?
So that was something that Ron worked out, both in terms of kind of what the market is for these with other municipalities and what they've sold them for, as well as kind of what the costs are to the city in terms of how the usage affects the city's financial burden with maintaining its sewer systems.
I'm going out on a limb. Is there any history of this sort of asset being used as a carrot, if you will, for particular types of development that you might want to see?
I don't know about it being used as a carrot. I think more so what you've seen with the sewer credits is that it can be an inhibitor. Not necessarily in the city, but in other municipalities where they're running up against their sewer credit cap, it can become expensive for projects that are trying to get down where they're not using enough credits to fit into their system. So that's where you see it more, is it almost being a limit on development,
Right.
because you have to meet what the allocated flow is.
So in your example about the 187 Clinton Street, you said that they need to be granted the credits or they need to purchase them?
They may need to purchase some credits from the city.
Okay.
I don't know that we have the final numbers on it, though.
Who makes that determination?
In terms of whether or not they need credits.
Yeah,
Or-
so like, and I'm just, just as a, maybe this is a a building department or engineering department question, is like, what threshold is a project at, or, so whatever, Mr. Whalen is redeveloping a 4-story thing with 4 lofts. Is that big enough? We have to look at the flow rate into the downtown sewer district, or blah, 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 or what's the, when we had a single family home here versus, what's that?
So
They just, yeah.
I can kind of give an answer. So for certain projects, you really don't have to worry about sewer flows. Any existing projects that's not otherwise, like if you have a commercial building that already has a sewage pipe running for it, and you want to do a redevelopment project, and you're not changing the size of that sewer pipe, there's no change to the credits that are required. If you're taking, a manufacturing site and you want to put housing on it, and the manufacturing site had a smaller sewer pipe and you now need a larger sewer pipe because you're handling more sewage because it's residential versus whatever the manufacturing usage was. Now you have an increase in sewage flows, and you need to either offset that by doing some sort of remediation at the site, or if you can't, you need to buy credits for your additional flows. And that's the question with the 187 Clinton, is whether they have additional need for sewage flows that they're going to need to offset, and that they can't offset by doing any sort of remediation on site.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions? All right, thank you, Bob.
So we've never used this before though, right? This is new.
As far as I know, the city's never sold any. I
Okay.
tried to do some digging. I didn't see anything where the city sold or otherwise transferred any of these sewage or sewer credits.
So, so we have this bank of them, say, for various reasons, so I'm going to keep using 187 Clinton. So they're doing a building there, and suppose they had bought, I don't know, a defunct factory somewhere else that had a certain size sewer pipe. Is that a way to obtain credit?
I don't think that would work, because I think it's tied. This is sort of a Ron practical question, because part of what happens with engineering is they get the plans and they look at it and say, yeah, your flows make sense. No, they don't, whatever. As far as I know, you wouldn't be able to offset one property with another in that way. If you were to buy, vacant property adjacent to the property where you had your development happening, you might be able to use that adjacent property for some sort of remediation for like stormwater and stuff. So it's a lower impact on sewage treatment. But that's the only way I think that could work. But you wouldn't be able to, say, buy one property in the 1st ward and one in the 6th ward and have them offset each other. And again, part of it is that there's sections to
Right.
the system too.
Anyone else? All right, moving on. Next is a discussion. Our presenter is Steve Carson, and this is in the Committee of Municipal and Public Affairs, and I will hand it over to Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, President Dundon. This discussion for the CDAC presentation to City Council and the Mayor's Office for FY 50 approved and voted on. The CDAC budget. Steve and Justin, welcome.
Hello. And you get mine.
Hello.
Hi, guys. So, do you want to talk about FY 50, the approved and what you guys voted on
Sure.
and present it to us if you'd like?
Okay. So, good evening, council. Thank you for inviting us here to present this. Now, our fiscal year 51 budget suggestions or recommendations rather to City Council includes a numerous set of both public spending to offset public spending and to assist with service organizations. Let's start out first with administration and planning. Excuse me, sorry, I'm having allergy issues.
Me too.
Our $163,325, you can find that on our fourth page, I believe it is.
Oh,
Oh, do you have the same packet I have? Do they have the
his packet might be a little different here, guys.
Okay, so it's the sheet is titled Proposed Fiscal Year 51 Budget CDBG Home and ESG. Administration and compliance. Unencumbered and available monies that was still available is 126,401 from the current fiscal year, where we last year budgeted 175,231.11. This year we are suggesting $163,325. For fair housing, we're putting forth 0. For the general planning and activities fund, $47,000 as an increase over last year's budget from $29,103.19. Administration and planning, the BLDC salaries and projects. Last year we did $38,738.63. This year our staffing is at $40,000. Housing, project management and coordination. Last year, $27,256.19. This year, $82,000. Code enforcement. Last year, we did $214,716.94. This year, we're doing $200,000. Now, all of these are, each section of this is capped, so we have a limit on how much we can place in each section. So we have to work within a matrix. For community development and programming, the home purchase assistant and repairs project last year had $375,000. This year, $75,000. The lead and asbestos risk assessment, $2,000. The demolition and blight removal, $468,830.99 last year, $200,000 this year. The Binghamton Homeowners Ownership Academy, $20,000 last year, $20,000 this year. For our capital worksheet, you'll see that $726,180.50. Okay. Now, for the section that's beyond that is our service programs. The agencies that reached out to us, Actions for Older Persons, their senior house or their senior health insurance counseling. Last year, we budgeted $17,346.09. The number of individuals within the city of Binghamton that they assisted last year was astronomical, and the need was even beyond what they could handle. So we did, as a committee, decide to bump their number to 25,000. We do have an aging population here in Binghamton. The Astor D. Rice Foundation, their FACE program, wasn't one of our budgeted programs last year. They requested 34,964. This year we gave them 10,000 to start out. The Boys and Girls Club of Binghamton. Now they've reached out to us through 3 different requests for a total of over $100,000 with their after hours teen program, their teen center, and their summer program. And we have valued these programs. We, as a group, the CDAC, spoke with different groups that work with them, including police officers and various groups that have been part of their programming and their outreach and the things they do with their teen programs. And we found that there was a lot of duplication of services within the Boys and Girls Club of Binghamton, those 3 programs, and that we felt that it wasn't helping as many people as some other programs could potentially do impact wise. But we did turn around and we did fund them all. 20,000 for the after teen program, the teen center 20,000, and the summer program 20,000. All right.
Justin, if I could slow you down for
Sorry.
just a second.
That's okay.
Appreciate- The summer program fee, was that to cover fees for people?
Yeah, this is
Okay.
where in the past we have helped cover the fees of people attending the program. We didn't cut that one as much as we did some of the other ones because we do believe that keeping kids out of trouble during the summer is something that we hope they can continue to do. But we also felt that the Boys and Girls Club as an organization has a far bigger reach on different grant money that they have access to and different donors bases that some of the other groups do not. And that because of such a, how do I put this nicely? Redundancy of service to the same kids, a lot of times that by cutting the money slightly in that program and in their other programs, we can have a bigger impact across the entire city as a whole.
Thank you.
Does that make sense? Okay, good. The Broome County Council of Churches, the Greater Good Grocery. We hadn't budgeted in fiscal year 50. We did donate or recommend $10,000 for this current fiscal year. The Broome County Urban League, the Attain Technology Center. Last year, we funded $8,760, and we duplicated that this year. The Broome County Broome County Urban League After School and Summer Program, $17,346.09, $15,000 this year. The CARES Backpack Program. Now, they did not officially apply to the CDAC and CDBG for funding. However, that has been in the past a program that the city of Binghamton has in fact helped fund. And we did throw a $10,000 recommendation towards CARES. The City of Binghamton Park Rangers Program, $10,000 last year, $10,000 this year. The City of Binghamton Community Policing, last year we did not. This year we were told by the police department that some of their grant funding that they had last year is running out, and that we hadn't funded them last year because they had that additional grant funding. Now we recommend $13,324.50 back to them because that other funding has expired. The Fairview Recovery Intensive Care Navigator, we did $27,346.09 last year. They requested $55,000. We're giving them $30,000. The Mothers and Babies Perinatal Network, the PAL Family Resource Center, they requested $17,346.09. Requested $25,000. We are giving them $15,000 in our recommendation. The Safe Streets Noma Community Center, last year $17,346.09, $15,000. And as you see, there's basically a a set of numbers where you're seeing a similar fiscal budget line, 17,346 last year and 15,000 this year. That's just based on the amount of money available and us breaking it down evenly across those agencies. The STACK program, Economic Crisis Prevention, they are looking to create a facility on Main Street on the west side. They requested a large sum of money, but we do want to get them some assistance because we do believe in what they're doing and helping people do economic planning so that they don't basically fall off the cliff into homelessness and stuff, that we keep them above water going forward. So 6,240 to start them out this fiscal year. Triple Cities Makerspace, their STEAM for All program last year was 17,346.09. This year, $15,000. We believe in their program and their ability to go out to our area schools and mentor people into jobs, careers, and different occupations. Vines, Grow Binghamton, 17,346.09. We got them $10,000 in this budget recommendation. And the YMCA Emergency Housing Program, they had requested $34,500. We hadn't funded them previously. We did give a recommendation of $15,000 to the YMCA. All right, now we're moving on to capital projects within local organizations and the city of Binghamton. The American Legion Post 80 has come to the city of Binghamton and to CDAC requesting $300,000 for the roof for their aging facility. That American Legion is not only a historical site here in the city of Binghamton, but is more than just an American Legion. We discovered through this process that so many community groups utilize that facility as a meeting space now, and that they're one of the last remaining rental big spaces for people within the city of Binghamton and organizations within the city of Binghamton where they actually use that site to help fundraise for their own organizations. So we did recommend $70,000. They did give us quotes on different patching things that can help assist and continue the longevity of that building. So we did put forth $70,000 for the American Legion Post 80. The Broome County Council of Churches Ramp It Up Youth Initiative. They have, I'm blanking, Steve, on what that.
It's the ADA ramps.
Oh yeah, the ADA ramps, yes, for houses within our area. They requested $25,000. We gave a recommendation of $25,000. The First Ward Action Council's home repair for seniors, $85,000 request. We did, we know they have a long list of residents and a waiting list, and we did fully fund their request at $85,000. The Phelps Mansion, the Roberson Museum, and SEP all reached out for some significant amounts of money for roof repairs. These are all parts of organizations that we felt have extensive grant programming and have different groups of fundraising and have a larger available pool of money to ask for assistance from. So we did not recommend funding their projects. The STACK project, now we talked about them in the services section earlier. They are moving to Main Street, as I said. They want to create a facility. They asked for $100,000 in creating that facility at 98 Main. We recommend funding towards $50,000 to help the NOMA area. YMCA roof repair. Sorry.
Never mind. I can talk about it with council after.
Okay. YMCA, the roof replacement. Now, as many of you know, the YMCA behind us is foregoing parts of their athletic facilities to increase the emergency sheltering bed space at the Y significantly. And part of that project requires that the roof be sound. They requested $41,467, and we felt one of the biggest impacts we can do, and nearly doubling the bed space at the YMCA, is by helping with that roof. Now, the City of Binghamton, we basically funded the requests of Parks and Recreation street rehabs to their full, minus the Alfred Street Park is 3,300 short. We ran up against the cap on that, but it is we gave in our recommendation $116,713.50 out of the $120,000 requested for that park upgrade. Laurel Ave, 45,000 requested and recommended. The Phelps Park basketball court rehabilitation, 65,000 requested, 65,000 referred. Webster Street Park basketball court, Jackson Street, 75,000 requests, 75,000 budgeted. And for street repairs, the city's Department of Public Works has requested 153,000 for Colfax, Dickinson, and May, full rehabilitation of those streets, and our recommendation is to fund that. All right, now street outreach emergency shelters. The outreach ministries of the Southern Tier. Oh my goodness, is this sheet being smaller? Sorry. The OM Showers of Hope. In fiscal year 50, we recommended $12,000. They requested $25,000. We have budgeted them $25,000. The Volunteers of America Men's Shelter, we budgeted $10,000 last year. We're budgeting $10,920 this year. The YMCA Emergency Housing Program. Last year we budgeted $11,000. This year, $35,270. The homeless shelter roof rehab at the YMCA, we did in the capital line. And the YMCA street outreach, $18,810. Now, this was a percentage of, for each of those, to keep us on the cap, was a percentage of their staffing numbers. And finally, the Rapid Rehousing Homeless Prevention Family Enrichment Network Caring Homes. We budgeted $60,000. Fiscal year last year was $61,360, and that's to the cap. Okay. And now, wow, spreadsheets go small. I'm getting too old. All right, for our home budgeting, administration, housing administration, the maximum that we can budget was $45,640, and we did that $45,640 and 60 cents. For the home programs, rehab projects, $225,000 is that should be fiscal year 51. I apologize. The top line says fiscal year 50 budget. That is fiscal year 51 in the boxed out column. As I was reading, I was like, wait a minute. Last year we budgeted 95,000. This year it's 225. All right. When it comes to Chodo, last year was 401,265.40. This year we're recommending $265,765.40. That number lower based on cap space, and that there's an encumbered value of $401,265.40 still available. That means our home grant is at $536,406. The home allocated is the exact number, which means we have zero money. We're at the cap for home. And That
Thank
is it. Is there? Do we have
Thank you for that.
questions? Do you
Um,
have any questions on why we chose certain ones over others?
I certainly do on aspects primarily of the CDBG, some home. I think I'll probably talk to Councilmember Middleton about like sending to committee so we can have more detailed review and questions. I will say I was thrilled by many of the recommendations represented. I want to thank you and the members of CDAC for the time that it takes to go through all of these applications and all of the conversations and questions that are asked. I am really grateful to see 2 parks on Southside East slated for improvements. I think I would just reiterate, and I know I shared this prior to the end of my term on CDAC, but with both the capital and the services agreements with the YMCA, I would just want to again express that I think it's important to have a conversation with them about their intake protocol before finalizing those agreements. They are currently not operating in a housing first capacity with the individual men that they provide shelter to. And I think if they truly want to extend and expand their services, that's going to be a critical piece. The only question I have at the moment, and Steve, this may be more of a question for you, but was the $200K for code enforcement all the reimbursement requests that Supervisor Schleider submitted?
I don't believe he actually made a specific amount, other than the amount they totally spent. I put a cap based off of the previous 12 months worth of salary expenditures that were eligible. So I base it off of eligibility when I present it to them.
Okay.
And he did request as much money as humanly possible in his own words. So more than what we were actually giving.
So I do have a quick question, and the text is very small. So I was listening as you read of the recommendations. I did notice for the YWCA emergency funding, I believe they received like less than half than what they were asking for, and that just stood out to me. So I'm just curious if you could share a little bit about that.
I could probably answer that better.
Okay.
So for all ESG programs, they have to go to the what's called the continuum of care, the Housing Coalition. If you know this, I'm not speaking down if you know this stuff, but some people don't. So I'm not.
I
You know this
appreciate
stuff
the
already.
backstory.
Okay.
Go for it.
So the continuum of care, the Housing Coalition, NY 511, we're required per our written agreement to go to them for funding recommendations. So we did that in either early, I think late winter, I think January or something like that. They reviewed the applications, and in general, they said, you know what, let's stick with salaries. And so they went through and said, you know, what are the salaries that are available? And you may, if you look, you'll see on the ESG, the thing where it says base salary, that was why that was drawn out. So we could see what the salaries were. And as you can see, both the COC recommendation and what CDA recommended was generally the same, other than for the YWCA. And I think it sort of just came down to, although it seems like an extra amount was given to the YW for street outreach, but I guess when it came down to it, they said, all right, fund these groups fully, and then what's left over, go to the Y. And I believe that was what the COC recommendation came down to. So they were trying to stick it to salaries only for those line items. So it was just like, well, you could give it all to the Y and not give any to any other agency, or you could give the max out to other agencies, which are getting less, and the rest to the Y.
Okay, thank you.
I was wondering, in the home funding, there was a set aside for Chodos, and we have no money expended yet. Is that typical for this time of year, that things have not rolled in yet, or what? And then there seems to be in the next year's request a rebalancing away from that Chodo funding into the owner occupied funding pile. And then what actual programs does that owner occupied, like what programs we're pulling from that? Is that the city's directed programs?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I can explain it. So two different things. So when it comes to the Chodo funding, the problem with Chodo funding is we get sort of a tiny amount of home funding. Home Chodo projects generally go into the millions. And so when we have an amount in a year's allocation. At most, even if we dropped it all in there, you're looking at $500,000. Even if we gave all of that to an agency, they're still probably going to have to generate 1.5, 2.5 million from another grant or other funding sources. So it's not like we can generally shove that out every year. A lot of times it's multi-year programs and projects, just because there's not a lot of agencies that are constantly doing CHOTO projects. We actually have 3 upcoming right now that we're working on. So this is, and unfortunately, that's why we always call it the CHOTO set aside. We almost hardly ever obligate it to one agency, because there's generally not an agency ready to come in and grab those funds, because CHOTO funding is ask First Word Action Council or any of these agencies. That the bureaucracy involved is insane.
So how long does that, how long is it allowed to sit there? And then how much do we have in this set aside from previous years?
So my calculations from previous years is up to this year would be 0. If we obligate with what we currently have obligated, we would have 0 left over. Just because it's not spent doesn't mean it's not sort of initially being obligated. It can take months or even a year or so to kind of get them through the paperwork process, get the RLs down, get the environmental reviews. The current one we're working on is it's come to City Council. I don't know if you remember the Gateway project, that scattered site First Word Action Council project. Working on the ER right now, and that's going to take months and months and months. So we've not even gotten into agreements with him yet. So we can't even obligate it through a program, a PO yet, until we get all these all our ducks in a row. So unfortunately, that's kind of how it sits there. The HUD rule is you have 3 years to obligate, 5 years to spend. Sometimes they waive that for us, but generally we can get it out the door within those 3. It's sort of the nature of the beast. I wish we had more CHOTO or with more home money so we could put more into CHOTOs because of that. I'm talking to my counterpart at Town of Union. They're just starting CHOTO projects now, and I said this is going to be the thing you've got to deal with. It's just the nature of the beast. Regarding rehab projects, so home money for rehab can only go for rehab projects that bring a house completely into code compliance. That is just the nature of the grant itself, which means that even nowadays with costs going up, stuff like that, it's a lot of money you got to put into a rehab project to bring it up to code. And if there's money left over, we'll try to help out if we can with, if there's some, kitchen upgrade, a bathroom upgrade, whatever. But we're always doing roofs, siding, new windows, lead abatements, plumbing, electrical, just to bring things up to code. So it's one of those client side things. And anytime you have a client side project, I don't know if any of those work in nonprofits or any agencies where you deal with client side projects. You kind of have to wait for someone to come to you with something, and you can't guarantee that you're going to spend that full amount or not. So it's every year, it's kind of like a variable. And we try to calculate how much we expect to spend. Now I'll say more recently, we're expecting actually to spend a lot more in the next few months.
You went from 50 to 95 to more than double, 225 now. So it's
because
growing that.
We're going through that money gangbusters right now. We've got a bunch of projects. We upped the amount we're able to put into projects from 50 to 75. So we're able to spend that money more quickly, do more with the projects, deal with the upgrade and increase costs. So that's where that rehab money goes.
And the 225,000 that we came up with was for us trying to rehabilitate 3 homes within the city of Binghamton, as we put forth a set of goals in our 5-year plan that we wanted to not only tackle emergency housing needs, but to help our housing stock here in the city of Binghamton and the homeowners, and get people to be homeowners. And if we can get 3 houses turned around as part of this fiscal year here in the city of Binghamton, we feel that's a step in the right direction. So that's part of the reason we put the 225 in there.
And just so you know, there's no guarantee we're going to spend the full 75. Some people just want to re-free up because they have to pay a certain portion back. So people may not want to take out the full 75. They may want to take out a smaller amount. So maybe in those cases, we can stretch it a little bit further. But we do have a wait list. We pull from the top. We try to be fair with everyone and deal with their things as according to when they applied.
In terms of some of the funding requests that weren't met fully, just for example, the Fairview Recovery Intensive Care Navigator, right? So presumably that person has a salary that's maybe that 55,000 or maybe more than that, I know, and we're giving 30,000, is that endanger that person? Is that, or there anything else like that where the amount we're allocating is possibly killing whatever it is we're trying to fund?
Yeah, the way we have to look at that is what money have you spent previously? In the current year, they've been obligated about, let's $27,000. It's over half the year's gone. They've not spent even half that amount yet. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on there, but the billings they give us should be higher if they want to get to 55. We actually had some older unspent opioid addiction recovery that we said, hey, if you spend this money we're giving you, we'll look and see if we can do an amendment to your contract and dip into some of those older funds. And they've not spent it yet. And that's on the agency itself for what they're billing, well, for the billing submittals they do for us.
Any other examples like that, or any other things of note?
Off the top of my head, no. I will say when I talk to the mayor, we're probably going to review First Ward Action Council and their current status with their senior home repair program. Looking at this, I can't think of any other agency right off the top that's kind of, I don't know how you would say it, behind on expenses, looking even at the admins. Sometimes Finn, I guess, with ESG, but Finn's in a very unique situation that they're essentially the only agency doing what's essentially an uncapped ESG project. And I know you're going to ask, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you. I did, so great, VOA has started doing a rapid rehousing program, but they didn't do it by the time these applications went out. So hopefully, and I told them the next year, I want you to apply because, we want to have more agencies in that sort of uncapped pool, because otherwise we're shoveling a bunch of money into an uncapped pool for only one agency. And then we expect them to, if they're, for whatever reason, if they can't spend those funds, that kind of messes the whole thing up. So.
And I guess I was interested in the comments on the sort of the duplication of, I think it was with the Boys and Girls Club, where you're digging down enough that you're seeing that we're reserving the same population over, 500 kids might be 200 kids 2.5 times or whatever. Yeah.
53, I think, was the number they gave us.
53?
It wasn't even a huge number. No, that's why we're looking at these and we're seeing each of these groups came in and talked to us, and we talked to other agencies that work around them, and with the police department and various groups within the city that also, overlap and do services and do different things and programs with them. And we just found that certain groups were better in serving a larger pool of people than the Boys and Girls Club is. Not that their programs are bad in any means, but that the number of people that they were serving was a smaller number for a higher value of a dollar amount, and that we thought we could impact more people within the city of Binghamton by spreading that wealth out.
And do we have a sense of, not to pick on the Boys and Girls Club, I certainly appreciate the Boys and Girls Club, but are they, as far as drawing from different areas of the city, making sure we're targeting a kind of, not targeting, but pulling a wide range of folks into some of these programs? I know, like, for example, like CARES backpack program, right? They make sure they have sites for distribution all over the place.
Yes.
Before you jump in, let me add. So just so everyone knows that City Council does have a packet with all of the service and capital program applications. It should be in the clerk's office unless Councilperson Middleton took it. I know because she was on CDAC, so she may have looked into it or not, but there was a packet provided to City Council. It should be in the clerk's office. If you guys need anything, I can email out specific applications, but that's a lot of megabytes.
Do you have a whole thing put together? Just throw it on the base camp.
Throw it on base camp. Okay. Please send me an email, so I'll do it tomorrow morning. If I can figure out how to get back on my base camp.
I can do that right now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I think with the Boys and Girls Club conversation, that we did ask some of these conversations when I was still discussions about some of the applications. CDAC did inquire regarding their outreach strategies. And it wasn't an extensive kind of strategic response. And I think if I remember correctly, that really factored into the decision to reduce as well. Speaking of the applications, the requests that came in, I don't recall seeing, and maybe I missed it, but it also doesn't look like there was an actual request for the community policing dollars. So was that just Chief Sikorsky representing that there's a need somewhere?
The community policing we hadn't funded because in the previous two, I think it's two budgets, right?
Yeah.
There was extra grant money available and they were using up that first. And community policing is something that the CDAC in my years on it had championed. And that now that the grant funding was up for the overtime coverage for that, we were putting forth some money so that the program could continue.
But he came for department.
So,
The-
oh yeah, yes, Chief Bidwell came and talked about that.
I think one of the things that we've seen consistently this year in just resolutions that are put forth, requests that are made, that I would say law enforcement, criminal legal system is consistently still receive it, like where other services are being cut in terms of grant capacity, grant opportunities, they're still seeing, if not an increase in grant opportunities. So I'm curious if they pursued either the same grant or an alternative community policing grant so that it wouldn't, I mean, CDBG is such a limited amount. And I would hate to see, especially because we've witnessed so much grant funding available for law enforcement and aspects of the criminal legal system. So do you know, was that a question that was asked?
We did ask if there was other funding sources that they were going after. They said that they were always going after other funding sources, but the particular funding source for that program there, because the program had basically lapsed during COVID, that they're just starting to come back. So this is to help them bring the program back into establishment fully. It started this, they just had their meeting or they were going to have their meeting. I can't remember specifically if it was, they had just had it or it was just coming up at that point. But there is a thing where they're going forward. So my guess is once they are fully reestablished and doing the stuff that they were doing prior to COVID, that they will again be eligible for grant funding that's there, but it was not at this time. Does that make sense, Councilwoman Rathmel?
Not completely, but I took a couple notes
Okay,
and I'll think it through.
all right.
Do we have an update on the fair housing study? Is there any?
So we hired Chrysalis out of the company that had done our home ARP plan. They are currently finishing that up now. I think they're supposed to give me a draft in the next few weeks, or actually the end of this week. I think it's supposed to be the draft. As soon as I get it, I will forward it on digital copy to City Council. I may even do a presentation too, if you wish. Of course, I have to read it, digest it, and everything like that. We'll try to incorporate what we can in the action plan and the con plan where possible. So that's the current status of that. They've been working on it. It should be done soon, and it should be done before City Council would approve final budget vote for the action plan.
Thank you.
But unfortunately, I don't have any. If you were looking for any preliminary, I don't have any prelim stuff for that.
That's fine. Just wanted to see where it was at. From like a national standpoint, have you guys been nervous about whether or not your CDBG funding would be there or not? Like, how does that from where you communicate with HUD? How has that been?
Well, I can
'Cause that's been
tell
my-
you the goods and the bads. We just received approval for the this year's budget. So this budget is based off estimations. So it's not even all that accurate. It's not too far off what we were actually allocated. In general, we received generally the same amount of money we received for last year. The only major difference is home went down about 20,000. That'll be reflected in the mayor's budget. But we got it so late that obviously CDAC wouldn't be able to take that, incorporate it, and still do presentations in time for everything else to get done. That being said, 25 is done. I do know the presidential budget recommends cutting CDBG and home, ironically keeping ESG as is, but home and CDBG to zero. Whether that will be in the final budget, I do not know. Regarding who we've talked to with HUD, the entire environmental office out of New York City quit, and the HUD office lost both our HUD rep and our HUD financial rep. So there's sort of this like, well, I mean, we're kind of in a wait and see kind of thing for that. Obviously, those would have impacts. I do know, and you can talk to the mayor about this. I don't want to speak for the mayor. I believe he was working with us or council of mayors that were presenting to the president, hey, we need this money because it's bipartisan, it's useful for everybody. Please, this is not something to cut. So that's what's sort of the truth going on with the current situation with it. Now, I don't know what CDAC's fears are, but I'll lend that to you.
What our fears are?
Yeah.
Our fears were big. We were fairly nervous, not only on how much money we would be getting, but what definitions we'd be able to accept, use, and what would be excluded or whatever in future go rounds. It did take us a little time to sorry, these are my readers and I can't see your faces, my glasses on. We were very concerned I think it was the first week of March. Was that when they announced it, or the end of February? About how our funding would be able to go forward, even if fiscal year 51 was able to eke in what it would mean for fiscal year 52 and beyond, because we were also doing our 5-year projections and how we would address different things if the words veterans and homelessness or LGBT or any other type of group could be potentially excluded from CGB funds, which was being discussed at that time in the media. So we forged forward with what we know at the time, and I think our presentation is our recommendations are pretty solid.
I think the only thing I would add in terms of the ESG, and you just write in the budget, I mean, that ESG portion is tiny. It's the smallest portion out of like CDBG, home, ESG. And the federal proposal is to not only eliminate CDBG and home, but to consolidate the continuum of care program. So Steve mentioned the local homeless coalition, the COC. So eliminating at this point locally, that's we're at around 3 million now for the actual permanent supportive housing, permanent housing. So it would consolidate the COC program and the housing opportunities for persons with AIDS program entirely into ESG. So if you can imagine reducing millions of dollars of current critical housing support into that tiny little emergency solutions grant portion. That is the federal proposal on the table.
Are you talking about HOPA with that? Is that HOPA going away and getting dissolved into ESG?
Yeah, COC, and HAPA being consolidated.
Okay, so because I know if HOPA goes away, then that's a major cut to staff.
Right. Right. So this is, I mean, COC and HAPA are larger than the city, but we are absolutely going to feel the effects if those are the cuts that come through.
Is there any concern at all about clawback of money that is been allocated and given but not spent yet?
The long and short answer is yes. I mean, But I guess we have to sort of take that sort of determined optimistic point that we just keep doing what we're doing. I have told agencies, if you get grants with us, get your billing in sooner. Don't wait. Get them as soon, do a monthly billing. If you want to drop it to a 2 weekly billing, go for it. Just in case of things like that. And unfortunately and I've heard a chill from some agencies that are concerned about getting grant funding because it's reimbursement based. If they spend the money, what happens if the feds yoink it back? Now, I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to assume though that when that happens, there's probably going to be some sort of legal actions. Whether that impacts us now or is something that will take years to resolve, I do not know. But we can't sit here and in doom and just, and worry and constantly. What the best we can do is, hey, let's do what we can with what we got. Be smart, be quick, use the monies when you can. And I guess that's the only thing we can really do moving forward with this. Did not need to put a chill on everybody. I do apologize.
Does anybody else have anything they would like to add to the discussion?
I think last year we approved everything from HUD, not once, but like maybe 2 or 3 times. I feel like it came to council, and I'm really hoping that doesn't happen again this year. So,
and I can address that. We were first off very conservative in the program income calculations. Program income is only going to be applied to the rehab projects, both in home and CDBG. And number 2, service program calculation is based only on entitlement. So we did not use a program income calculation to include it for entitlement, just to be doubly extra careful with that. And so moving forward with that, we shouldn't have any problems with sort of redoing these budgets after the fact. Now there have been times where HUD came to us later and said, oh, by the way, we gave you the wrong number for home or CDBG or ESG, and we had to do that again. Could that happen? Yes. Could there be a clawback? Yes. I hope there's not. But going forward, at least with the numbers I'm giving to the mayor's office, that is our current best knowledge of the amount we're getting.
yeah. So
yeah,
we'll be cautiously optimistic, but it's like, I don't know. I don't know if it's like worth rehashing, but it's just like when some of these agencies reach out to me after like I know I voted and approved it, and they're like, what's happening? And then it's like, oh, we voted and approved it again. It was a bit of a headache, and I think
yeah, I agree.
I'm hope we can avoid it.
Yeah.
That we will this year.
Yep, steps have been put in, but it's one of those things that as soon as we find out there's a problem with the way we do, we need to reevaluate how we do it and fix it so that problem doesn't occur again.
If you do decide to move forward on addressing the intake protocol at the YMCA, I'm happy to support
The
with
YM.
language for that. Yeah, at the YM.
So just be aware, and you probably noticed this, that they're not getting homeless funding through ESG. Because they applied for service program through CDBG. So the ESG requirements for standards is not we don't have to enforce it from the ESG perspective, but I see what you're saying from the city's perspective.
Housing, yeah, housing first
something
is
different.
best practice.
Yes, yeah.
Anyone else?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
No, we can't do that yet.
Oh,
We missed voting for expedition on R 25-97.
all right.
So before we do that, I wanted to make a motion to expedite R 25-97. Do I have a motion?
I'll
I
make a
will-
motion.
And a
I'll
second?
second. Yeah.
All right. We need a roll call for that, don't we? Yeah. Roll call.
Councilmember Rathmel. Aye. Councilmember Hotchkiss.
Aye.
Councilmember Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Councilmember Murray. Council President Dundon.
Aye.
Thank you. It is 5-0.
Now I'll take a motion for adjournment.
Now I'd like to motion to adjourn.
And a second?
Second.
Second.